We're lucky to have David and Sharon with us. Please welcome Ken Hersh, Sharon McMahon, and David Rubenstein.
Hey, thank you all for being here, and thank you, David and Sharon, as well. This is a great opportunity to celebrate our exhibit. President Bush's, one of his signature pieces of legislation was the No Child Left Behind, which really encouraged by third grade this to be proficient in reading, because that was really where the curve starts to separate. Sharon, in your experience as a teacher and now interacting with the public, do you feel that we're making some headway?
I mean, in the classroom, literacy is such an enormous issue. It is really difficult to teach high-level content if you can't read it. You know, and this is something that I discovered as a government teacher for many years. It is a unique challenge to try to get students who are 16 years old and read at a second grade level, to teach them really, really challenging concepts about like the Electoral College. If when you give them information to read about it, it's difficult for them to do that.
What did you do?
I mean, this is one of the unique challenges, right? Is learning about how literacy works, how the brain learns to read. But this is, a much larger issue than just one classroom teacher teaching government. I can't single-handedly bring all of the children who don't read up to the level, plus teach all of the content that I need to teach. But one of the things tools that I found really helpful in learning vocabulary and learning these sort of very important concepts of government is to use humor. Right? If you can associate it with something funny, if you can laugh, you're much more likely to remember those very challenging vocabulary words.
So was governerds one of your vocabulary words?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have some governerds here today?
If Carter had not lost that election because I got inflation so high, Ronald Reagan wouldn't have been president. And if he hadn't been president, George Herbert Walker Bush wouldn't have been vice president. And if George Herbert Walker Bush hadn't been vice president, he probably wouldn't have gotten to be president. And if he hadn't been president, maybe George W. Bush wouldn't have been president. So I take credit for getting two Bushes elected president because so that's my contribution to history.
So here's something that I struggle with. There are a lot of people who are engaged in what's going on. I mean, I see people that your podcasts and your social media is on fire. There's plenty of people on extremes that you name it. People I think are switched on. So in terms of engagement, that's one thing. Do you think there's a difference, David, between engagement and civic involvement? You think
Well, I think being an engaged citizen to me means you understand the issues that are involved and you're trying to do something to improve the problems. And also you do one thing that sadly we don't do that much in this country, which is the most important thing to be a civically engaged person, which is to vote. Think about it. In this country, roughly 62% of eligible voters vote in presidential elections. In non-presidential elections, you're lucky to get 30 or 40%. So we have people that have given their lives to protect our right to vote, and yet we don't actually exercise our right to vote. And that's a very sad situation. I don't want to go to the situation they have in certain countries like Australia where you pay people to vote or you penalize them if you don't. But we need to make people feel that if you vote, you're really exercising a franchise that's important. Now, I love it when I see on election day people standing in line for hours. Now, I say, I wouldn't know if I would stand in line for hours. I'd vote early, so I wouldn't have to stand in line for hours. But people stand in line for hours because they realize that one vote can really make a difference.
Why is it so hard for our population to settle on a common set of facts now?
Yeah, there's that phrase, you can entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own set of facts. I'm not somebody who likes to cast aspersions and point fingers at a specific person and be like, well, it's his fault. That's not my style. But I do think it's a multifaceted question. We can point to, the rise of cable news as one set of examples with that, where, when you have to fill 24 hours a day with something, you're going to fill a lot of it with opinion-based content.
Why do you think, and I'll add, in the museum, we have other great names like Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King. There have been more contemporary great people that step up against the tide and have their voice rise above. What is it that in today's world makes a great leader?
Well, a great leader is somebody that's willing to take on challenges, who's willing to basically go against the conventional wisdom, to basically be willing to say, this is how I think we should move forward, when it's not necessarily the most popular thing to do so. It's easy to say everybody should do something that everybody agrees on, but taking the conventional wisdom and going against it, or going against the common grain, is not easy to do, because today, in the era of social media, you'll be really vilified dramatically by people in a way that didn't exist before. When I was in the White House, you had 15 minutes of evening news. Walter Cronkite was on 15 minutes a night. You had 2 or 3 newspapers people paid attention to. There was no social media. The vilification wasn't so great. And while I don't want to make it sound like it was Pollyannish kind of time and it was an era of good feelings, it wasn't quite as bad today. Today, you kind of destroy people's reputations so quickly that people say they don't want to participate in this kind of food fight anymore, and it's a sad situation. If I had the solutions for this, I would be in Iowa, New Hampshire, and so forth. I don't have the solutions for it, but it's a sad situation, and there are some countries that seem to be able to do it somewhat better than us, with some minuses they all have. But I do worry that the best people in the country will say, I don't want to be in public service anymore. And when that happens, you're going to get second-rate people, and then you're going to get a second-rate government. And so I really encourage people to encourage others to get into government.
And this is a moment that we as Americans must decide what is important to us. And my position has always been that the principles of democracy must transcend any party allegiance. I don't care if you voted for the flying spaghetti monster. Your allegiance must be to the principles of democracy before you have an allegiance to any individual, any candidate, any person, or any red or blue party. And we all have the ability to make that choice in this moment.
And we all have a responsibility to our own democracy to make it better, and you two make it better every day. So join me in thanking David and Sharon. I want to thank Next Point for endowing Engage at the Bush Center. Next up in our series, we have a very special Engage, our annual Laura Bush Book Club. This year, we're focusing on To Kill a Mockingbird. The date is May 8th. And we have a special announcement that Mary Badham, who played Scout in the 1962 film, who is also part of the onstage production, which will be at the Dallas musicals, the Broadway in Dallas at that exact same time, will be here on May 8th. The museum exhibit, Freedom Matters, will be open on your way out. Sharon will be there greeting our guests. And please don't forget on your way out also, as you go through the museum store, where copies of 2 of David's books will be on sale. Thank you all for coming, and we really want to also say welcome to a new audience that we've welcomed here tonight, who may be more podcast listeners than Bush Center visitors. So we're glad to welcome you here and hope to see you again. Thank you.